There are now more than a dozen other nations that have higher high school graduation rates than the United States. The problem is that we don't really know what the cost to America is of failing to educate large numbers of students, but it's really risky.
Individually, the data is just overwhelming that education is correlated with access to better jobs and higher earnings, higher income, lower unemployment rates, happiness, more health, higher marriages. So, I mean, education is our preparation for adulthood.
By the time I was in 8th grade, I had just witnessed a lot of very negative things in my household, just a lot of alcohol abuse, a lot of issues with my family. I ended up deciding to drop out of school for the first time. And that first time that I dropped out, I went looking for a job and found a job as a gardener pushing lawnmowers.
I dropped out of high school in the second semester of the 10th grade and thought that was a cool thing to do. You know, as a young man growing up in the housing projects, full of poverty, hopelessness, and despair, what I saw primarily were street guys and street folks, and who were kind of isolated from mainstream society. And I didn't have the ambition of being a doctor, lawyer, accountant, or school teacher of any profession, because that's not what I saw.
The average age of the adult that we're serving is 31. These are individuals who are young enough to get their high school credential and get additional skills and go into the workforce and contribute to society in a very meaningful way.
You know, there are 2 million jobs today that are begging. They're going begging. These are jobs that are open, that people can fill, but aren't being filled because we don't have a skilled workforce. That's a drag on the economy. When people don't have the jobs to fill, they're not earning paychecks, they're not shopping, they're not going to restaurants, they're not buying homes, they're not doing all of the other things that fuel economic growth.
We need to find ways to address the needs of people from every segment of the population, because their children are going to be folks we need to rely on too. When my generation is retired, and many in my generation have not saved enough for retirement, are going to be relying on the public sector. We need as many productive citizens paying taxes as we can get, and not more young people who are also relying on public assistance. I mean, this is a fundamental turning point almost for the society with regard to whether we are going to have the productivity that we're going to need to support the population mix that we're going to have over the next 25, 50, 75 years.
I worked every day possible, as many jobs as I could possibly work, because I was trying to provide for a family. I was a young man, and it was real hard at the time. I was a great athlete. I was also a great student. I've had straight A's my entire time in school. It was just outside noise that prevented me from succeeding.
I went to the 2nd grade because my parents were, well, they signed us up to home educate, but we were never actually home educated. I was just getting any job I could get that would hire people that didn't have a high school or equivalency diploma. I was working 3 jobs because I had to be able to survive. I had apartment rent, I had a car payment, all of my utilities, just daily living expenses. 3 jobs is what I had to work to basically survive.
Wages at the low end of the distribution in the United States have really gone down in real terms. So the economic disadvantage of not finishing high school has actually grown in the last 20 or 30 years, and it's quite sizable. I mean, some estimates put it at roughly $500,000 over their lifetime.
Over time, I became employed, and I'm a young mother. I have a child. I needed security, so I took a job. And then you didn't have to worry about having a high school diploma. No one asked you. They needed a position filled, and you qualified. You had the job. So basically, long story short, that's how it's always been for me for years.
Economically, high school dropouts are more than, on average, twice as likely not to have a job. What does that mean for unemployment checks, subsidized housing, the healthcare system? Half of the incarcerated population is thought to be a high school dropout. When you offer them educational classes, they are way more likely not to commit a crime again, 40% less likely to commit a crime again. That's unbelievable when you look at the soaring costs of incarceration in the US.
When you're behind those doors, you have time to think about all the wrongs that you've done and what can you do to change, you know? And you come up with the answer, am I gonna do the same thing when I get out, you know? What is it gonna take? And I mean, you need that opportunity. You need someone to come in and help you try to get back within society and, you know, do what's right.
And there were all these different things, right? And then I started thinking, you know what? The most important cost of all is the cost of what might have been, and that can't be measured. How do you measure what someone could have been had they lived up to their potential, right? It's all these things that are just out of reach. It's a business not started, a song not written, a bedtime story never read. And to me, that was heartbreaking, that it was there. It could have been. It just wasn't.